Hey, Clay, Brendan. Sorry if I cock blocked your logging on to Castledine. I didn't really feel like I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just sit here, do my work, mask my baits, watch Watson and Castledine talk. And then I thought about it, and I said, I don't really want to listen to them. I don't really want to listen because I think I've already heard it. Right? Right. Builder dude, how goes it? Uh, Painter dude wife might be reaching out to you, Burns. You might have to do a live. Hello, South J. Got colors? I've got matte colors figured out. Non-Mac, I don't know. That's gonna require some continued thought. Could do double crawls. Hey Tom, good to see you, hear from you. JP Harrell, how are you? Thank you for swinging in. Cold in Kentucky, yeah. It was pretty chilly down here last night. Got down into the 40s. We got down into the 4s. Pretty painful. Shad or brim? Shad or brim? I'm trying to think of something. Yeah, I got the Halloween stand outside all night, snotty nose. Brim would be fun because I can usually, if I try and if I try and my favorite thing to paint brim wise is those little baby bluegill you see that like swim around docks. Like if you've ever walked out on a dock or walking down like a seawall and you look over and you see them like Zara spooking around the dock pole. They're always like little silvery gray with like highlight colors. That's probably my favorite thing to paint. So, because typically when you match, like for years when I painted like a bluegill that people wanted, it was to mimic an adult size bluegill this big, but I've never seen really a little bait size bluegill that actually had those like dark green colors and that kind of stuff. So when I'm doing it, if I'm trying to match a bluegill, I typically and I've caught a million on like a a standard adult bluegill color, but typically when I'm painting a bluegill for enjoyment, or if you're like, hey, just paint a bluegill, it'll typically be to try and match one of those little bitty yearling bluegill. And the fun thing about those is that there's not so much differentiation or so much like variance in the way it looks that it couldn't pass for a shad or something else. So I typically like to go that route. So yeah, JP, I'll show you the bait here in 1 second. But that would be a good one, Morgan. That would be a good one to do a little bluegill. So here's one that's painted. I don't know that I have a regular one around here. There's one around here somewhere. But it's a pretty small, compact bait. They're actually this one I've had a couple years. That one it won't show up because it's too bright. But this one, believe it or not, caught me a bunch of schooling fish. Now, typically schooling fish, crankbait is about 30th down the list of things I'm going to throw on schooling fish because I just don't feel like they bite it that good. And some fish came up schooling, and rather than like get down and find something more appropriate, I just threw that bait at them, and I'll be damned if that was what I caught them on that day, schooling, which I thought was odd, but I didn't want to argue. BBC, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. Match the hatch guys crack you up. Burns, what else are you supposed to do? How else are you supposed to make any sense of all the fish, all the noise that you hear, that you read, that you do anything? It's like the one thing that you can like wrap your head around that makes sense to like completely simplify what you're doing, like how to make a choice. Like, all right, I'm here, I'm looking around, there's a bunch of little brim swimming around. Let's throw a brim. Easy. Match the hatch. You gotta have a starting place. You gotta have somewhere to start from. Who else got the snow from the Great Pumpkin? Who got a bunch of rocks? Jim is the opposite. He is not matching any hatches. He unmatches the hatch. That would be a pretty funny slogan for someone. Maybe I'll add that to the Tacklecraft banner on the website. Unmatch the hatch. Unmatch the hatch. It would be a pretty funny T-shirt. It sounds like that would be in like the Jordan Lee lineup. Typically in schooling fish, I do want my bait to stand out. I don't want like uber natural, because why would I do that? I don't know about y'all, but if I'm fishing for schooling fish, I do not want to match the hatch. I typically want to match it in size. I think size is the biggest deal, but I don't want like the most real looking bait. Or I won't say that. I don't want the most specific to what is swimming around. I don't want to match what is I'm looking at. Hello, AJ. A guy caught a speckled trout that had to toss it back, but was surprising to see for the first time that far north. But water's definitely still pretty warm. That's fun. Like a little flash, underspins. I know I've told this story before, but I as stupid as an underspin sounds, maybe not an underspin, a flashy swimmer. So weighted hook, offset hook, little blade on the bottom. How much difference could it really make, right? Apparently, all the differences. Yes, Daryl, join us. Join us on YouTube. Blade on soft bait makes a difference. It does. It certainly 100% does. If you're like me and you're a skeptic, and the majority of the stuff you hear, you say, that sounds dumb. But come to find out, that little stupid blade can be the difference in bites and no bites. So I don't know. It's pretty cool though. Pretty cool. Helps keep your bait down. There you go. There you go. Or you can put a number 6 Indiana on it. Keep it up. Make that thing really thump. But I haven't seen. I don't know if where y'all fish this happens. But on the Alabama River, growing up in the summertime, I would see fish school every time I launched the boat. Like I would put the boat in, and I would idle out to the river, and like on my way out to the river. And this is when I was coming from Tuscaloosa. I was coming from school on the weekends, and I would drive down, and it would typically be Thursday afternoon, and I would get there Thursday afternoon, like kind of late, and I'd have like an hour and a half or two to fish, and I'd pull up, and when I'd be idling out, you'd see fish busting every time, and for whatever reason, it happened for years and years and years, and then just all of a sudden, like fish quit schooling. It was the weirdest thing. I remember like in the fall, you'd catch them schooling, like all these little like pencil dick bass, like little 8-inchers, they'd be schooling everywhere, and like it was just lots of schooling activity. And like in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, like it seems like schooling activity has gone way down. I don't see it hardly much at all anymore, and I don't know what causes that. Why are perch and rainbow trout color baits so productive for bass lakes and bass that don't have those forage fish? Because bass can't count the dots. Bass can't count. The orange kicker blade. I think that's a real thing. But down here, guys have figured out, in other parts of the world, that what was typically like, because it looks good, right? So you go out there, it's cold, it's March, pre-spawn, river's dingy, like it looks right. You get on your like coleslaw spinner bait with a red kicker blade or chartreuse and white or chartreuse or whatever, and you got that red kicker blade on it, big gold blade on the back. And you're like, all right, this is it. But then like the water warms up and you put all that shit up. But come to find out, it's not, just a spring thing. And I sold a bunch of spinner baits to guys with red kicker blades in July, and you get to talking to them about it, and they're like, I started throwing this thing earlier in the year, and I kept it tied on, and then the next time I went, I threw it and caught some fish on it, and retied it and threw it the next time I went. And he's like, the next thing you know, 5 months have gone by, and I'm still throwing the same bait. It's like, yeah. And it's like they just eat it, which you can't really gauge fish down here because fish down here like neon orange, fluorescent red, typically orange, 12 months out of the year. Um, but I've seen it other places too. I know I told you all about the time I got my ass kicked in this creek, and typically, my competitive side is if you put me, um, uh, if you put me in a creek with other guys in a tournament, I typically enjoyed that because I don't get bent out of shape. I just look at it as, oh, I'm just gonna beat their ass. You know what I mean? Like I'm just gonna outfish everybody in here, so this will be fun. So that like provides me a challenge to like outfish everybody. And oh, did I get it handed to me one day? And I was in there and I was cranking like an 09 Bagley or something, and Jody was throwing a Tennessee Shad or something, pretty standard. Like he was throwing white, I was throwing chartreuse, and there was a boat behind us, and I could just hear like rustling and bustling like in the boat and shit dropping on the boat and like lots of stuff. And I was like, what? And I'd see like a fish get dipped, and I was like, hmm. And then like a few minutes later, I'd hear something flipping, and I'd look over there dipping another one. And I was like, what's going on? And they were steadily just like hammering them. And I looked, and I knew who the guy was, and I could see his bait when he would cast it, and it was like a OFO. It was like that. You could see it like it was a square bill, and you could see it like flying through the sky. I was like, that dude is throwing fluorescent red, and it was October or into September, and I was like, that's a weird time of year to be throwing that. And but I didn't really have any reason to say that. Like, it just struck me as odd. But dude, they crushed them. They didn't have like they didn't win. They didn't have like a giant bag, but in that creek, they figured them out. Um, and we were doing the exact same thing, just wrong bait color. Um, but how important color really is, it's very important. caught caught fish on 3 different colors, all the same bait. You just caught them biting. That's typically how it goes. I mean, there's some days where it doesn't matter. You get on the right fish and the right bite, and color does not matter. Bait hardly matters. You just need to get something in front of them. But like that day with me and Jody, like we had what I mean, I don't feel like you could have thrown a better bait. I don't think our baits were wiggling improperly or not being presented properly. Um, but they were on the other end of the spectrum from what those guys were catching them on. But I'll tell you that color doesn't matter. Hella. Some days it doesn't. Everybody knows that. Some days it doesn't. But there are other days where it matters a lot, and is the difference in a bite and 30 bites, or it's the difference in catching a 4-pounder and catching nothing. But there's no real way of knowing it besides experimenting, unless you've seen, like, because I have that ingrained in my brain, that red bait flying through the air. If I go back to, if I'm fishing in that situation again and I take my like chartreuse Hellcat and running around and I'm not getting bit, and I throw like a white one and not getting bit, I will throw a crawfish, like a bright one, just to check. You know what I mean? Just to see. But I don't know. The slogan is, if you ain't scoping, you're hoping. I don't. This live scope thing has gotten me so annoyed. Like, it's so stupid. Like, people act like if you don't have live scope, there's never going to be another bass caught, like, in existence. Or is this strictly for like tournaments? I mean, I still think you could, like, I still think locally you can, depends on where you are, I guess. Like, if you're fishing those herring lakes, those guys are probably pretty good scopers. Those fish are probably like spotted bass, like Smith Lake. You know, it plays a huge role there. But like for the rest of the world, like, who cares? You know what I mean? That was a voicemail chime from Colorado. But I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with live scope. Like, if I had to go fish some like high level tournaments, would I live scope? Sure. But like, if I'm just like dicking around fishing like 50 boat tournaments by the house, just getting out there having fun, not trying to be like some, like, dude that's going pro, I just go fish. 90% of Ivy's DDs probably having a live scope. Probably did. Probably did. But how many people are doing that? You know what I mean? Like, it's not a huge population of people that are on OHIV. I know that gets an insane amount of pressure, but in the grand scheme of anglers out there that are just trying to like go catch bass, I don't feel like it's a very big nut. I don't know what's going to happen with live scope. My biggest problem with live scope, when everybody defends it, is that I don't give a rat's ass about live scope. I don't care who does it. I don't none of that matters to me. What matters to me is where do you want it to end? What is enough to what point do we have to get to um, for people to be like, this is dumb. This is not fun anymore. This is stupid. Uh, I'm telling you, like, it's going to be the point where it's like you look on your phone and there's like a 3D layout of the lake and you get underwater and it's like, oh, there's a 3 pounder right there. Like, is that what everybody wants? Live Scope 8.0 would be live video, sure. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, at what point is that shit going to get annoying to where, like, we're crossing into that? We're seeing the backlash from people that are like, you know what, this is kind of encroaching on what we feel like fishing is all about. But it's going to continue to get worse. I mean, it's not like technology ever goes backwards. So they're going to keep pushing it uh, to the point to where they're just going to run everybody off. I mean, maybe I guess I don't know. So that was my point, Brendan. Like all these guys that are like heavy pro live scope. What do you want? Do you want to be able to pull up to the lake and know where every fish is and know how big they are and be able to look at them and throw at them? Because that sounds awful. Like, I don't think that's gonna do any good. Um, Especially competitive wise. Like, if you're talking about like professional tournament fishing, like, is that you just want everybody to like know what's out there and just go throw at them? Like, oh, I got a 5 pounder right here. Like, it would just be like 12 months of the year, sight fishing. Every tournament, every fish is a sight fish. You know it's there. You know how big it is. That's it. That's what I'm saying, Clay. It's going to turn into that, dude, to where you might as well not be in your boat. You might as well just like put your little goggles on, turn a fan on, play some like bird chirping music and like loon sounds and like virtual fish. I don't know. I'm looking past live scope. Like live scope is child's play compared to what's coming down the pipe. Um, so like what are my kids going to be like? What is fishing going to look like for my kids? Probably not like fishing. Probably casting at things. So they probably need to work on their casting uh, accuracy. But besides that, like, I don't know. It's kind of scary. Jeremy, you can do that at home though, dude. They make games for that. Do you think a greater percentage of fishermen will take one giant per day than 20 medium dinks? Initially, yes. One time they will. And then once they get it under their belt, and they're like, that was cool. Now, go do it. You know what I mean? Now I just want to go fishing. I feel like DDs are like a big one is appealing to a guy that hasn't caught a lot of big ones. So you go get that big one out of the way. And you're like, all right, that was fun. But now I kind of just rather like catch fish all day. Clay, Taku is definitely a robot. I saw Bass post a picture of some mustachios on anglers today, and I got to Taku, and Taku had a mustache. That his mustache is definitely AI. He is an avatar. That is, yeah, Taku is not real. You know the girl that was on the plane that said he is not real and got all emotional? Taku was the guy in the seat. That's who she was talking about. And he said, Taku real. Taku real. What does a robot mustache look like? It looks like a regular mustache, but it's got nuts and bolts under it. Taku real. I don't know. I think this shit, like all the technology stuff, it matters if you wanna be somebody tournament fishing. Like if that's what your goal is, if you want to like make a name for yourself and you want to be like, you know, bass famous, yeah, you need to be live scoping. If you just want to go out, have a little fun, throw your weird JDM shit, swim baits, whatever, like the conversation is irrelevant. Gonna take you to AI smallmouth Disneyland. Exactly. Exactly. So who knows? Who knows what the future holds? I just don't. I don't like the sound of it. It doesn't sound fun to me. But maybe I'm just a Randy. John says all it's done so far is increase my rough fish catching numbers. Doesn't sound terrible. All electric boats, that'll certainly be a thing. I don't know what's worse though. Me trying to keep batteries or me keeping a gasoline powered outboard running. Yeah, scoping keeps going where it's going. Nobody's going to buy any crankbaits anymore. It's just going to be like soft plastics and underspins and like jerk baits. And these like all these kids now that are growing up on LiveScope, they're gonna be like, dude, you wanna do something really fun? And they'll be like, what? Like, turn the graphs off. My dad told me about this. Let's go up shallow and throw a buzzbait. Like, what? What's that? Like, let me show you. Like, dude, that thing's dumb looking. But like, I know. It's crazy. They eat it. Watch. Tulsa Craft. Tesla, excuse me. Tulsa. My whatchamacallit, my Lixdexia kicked in. I couldn't agree more. If you're trying to climb the ranks of the Bassin world, you better have forward. But if you're just a weekend warrior and don't derb, then there's plenty to be had without it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you want to go, like, you know, if you want to go beat Ben Milliken in an open, yeah, get good at it. But like, besides that, what does it matter? Like, do you think you have to have it? Do guys think they have to have it to compete in like their local clubs? I don't know. Maybe certain places, but I still think there's room for guys to go out there and just have fun without it. Is there any is there any bass clubs out there that have they're like they've banned it from their club to where they're like a technology free club? You can only join our bass club if you have like a 520C Lowrance. Muskie guys banned it. Good for them. I wish Bass would ban it. I think it's lame. I think it's lame. Good for crappie, yeah. Supposedly it has changed the crappie fishing more than bass ever thought about. Like, if you're not crappie fishing within it, you're really behind the eight ball. There was one in DFE area, but they allowed it in 23. Well, that's lame. They broke down. Does Poche have it on his boat? Does he run it on his little boat? I've never looked. Never looked. But like I said, at the end of the day, all of this is about what you're really trying to get out of your experience in bass fishing. And it's all up to the angler. What do you want to get out of your small amount of valuable time out on the water? Me personally, I want to take some of these badass Burns baits. I don't want to look at a fucking graph. I just want to clear my mind, throw at beautiful trees, try to figure some fish out, and take my ass to the house and see my kids. You know what I mean? That's it. Told my buddy I wanted to donkey rig for crappie at fork. He thought I was nuts as he started screaming, dropping jigs in their heads. I enjoyed my. See that? Keith has it on his little boat. Well, you're just greedy, Jeremy. You're just a game hog. You just want to seine the lake. I don't know. I'm not as bloodthirsty. Not as bloodthirsty. Where I just want to deplete the population of bass to the point where I will do whatever it takes, buy whatever technology in order for me to catch fish. I just need my boat to run and float and my trolling motor to work. That's about it. Me and Randy. I'll go throw my. Is he still doing the? Speaking of Randy, is he still doing his fancy jig? I saw that he's. I saw he's switching over to Tackle Warehouse and not Boatworks. And all of his fancy jigs were going through Boatworks. There you go. You got it figured out, Burns. You got it figured out. Hasn't yet, Chris. Hasn't yet. But the thing about it, Chris, he can't even use his down scan and his side scan. Right? Like, I feel like you need to like work through that. Not to say it can't be done, but like if you're going to be good with electronics, you need to be good with electronics. And he's not good with electronics. So that's like trying to race cars and like people are like, "Oh, have you ever driven a race car?" I'd be like, "Yeah." Like, really? What kind? A golf cart? Like what? Like I drove a golf cart. Like, oh, well, that's not the same. Like, sure it is. Gas, drive, same. The power button. Jeremy, you wouldn't skim out 15 plus. You're gonna let it go. Stuff his ass. Ain't nobody else gonna catch that thing. $15 would be a state record. Might need to stuff him. Barrel rolled 4 times down the front stretch and said, "I gotta go back fishing for real." I don't know. Is it like I think if you gave my dad forward-facing sonar tomorrow, I don't think you're going to see results for quite some time, a long time. Because, like I said, like he didn't have that great a grasp on regular sonar. Like he wasn't using it to its potential to find fish. So forward-facing sonar is going to be really difficult. Oh yeah, I buy those too whenever I can find them. I love a good old smoked out skin mount. I've got one right over your head right here, and a big striper. But I should document that. Bop gets live scope. What happens when you give a guy who's never really optimized his electronics live scope? How long does it take to see results? That would be a good series. 40-inch Laker. That's a big one. But I don't know how long it's going to take him. We'll see. He doesn't have it yet, but I would say probably a year if he went a lot. But the problem is he doesn't go enough. Like if he gets forward facing sonar and goes as much as he does now, it'll take him 3 years to get good at it. So he's gonna have to go a lot more. He's gonna have to practice. We'll see. We'll see. But maybe if he's got the silver bullet, it'll be inspiration. Like if you got $2,000 hanging off your trolling motor, it's probably a little more incentive to go use the damn thing. But I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, we shall see. We shall see. It'll be interesting. Internet's still working. I mean, I like Watson, but I told y'all that's the way it goes. One guy stinks up the place and like causes a stir, and it's like, oh, can you tell that story? Like, can you do what you did before with me, so I get a bump? Like, can you like, yeah, like say shit that controversial, but like say it a little different than the last time, but pretty much the same thing. Maybe I'll ask you some questions in a different way. Jeremy, it actually doesn't surprise me because you know what? When I'm fishing down the bank like a plebe, do you know how many fish are there that I'm not catching? I don't have to have forward-facing sonar to know that there is a multitude of fish that aren't biting my bait. You know how I know that? From not catching anything. Call me old-fashioned, but it's probably better I don't physically see them, that I just know it in my head. When you come past a really juicy looking tree and you go, I know there's one in there. And you make a million casts and you don't catch him. I feel like such an old geezer. I feel like Jeremy's like the youth of America, and I'm like this old grandpa. Dad, you don't even know how many fish are out there not biting your bait. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. You know how? I'm not catching them. I'm just casting. I'm just casting. No yanks. The beard does not practice and he does not learn. No. No, he does not. He does not. Because he fishes the same damn spots 12 months out of the year. And I tried to tell him, like, dude, they don't live in there all the time. You know what I mean? got to hold your mouth right. I had a buddy. Speaking of dumb fishing sayings, I had a buddy that I grew up with, best friend of mine. Him and his father, I think his father or his grandfather, coined this phrase that he somehow believed, but he said we'd be fishing along and we'd catch a couple, and he'd say, "Hey, why don't we go over there on that bank?" Like, why? He'd say, "Looks good." Like, well, we're catching them over here. He's like, "Yeah, but there's fish over here. There's fish over there." I'm like, "No," but he was like, "Yeah, if there's fish on this bank, there's fish over there." Like, I don't think so. And he's like, "Yeah, dude. Like, my dad always told me that." I'm like, are you serious right now? Like, yeah. If the crickets are chirping, the bass are birthing. That's a new one. I've always heard if the cows are laying down, the fish are not biting. If they're standing up, the fish are feeding. I could see that kind of being in the natural world. You know, the lunar game tables tells you when the best animal, deer, and whatever activity. So I could see I could see the cow theory working. I'm not opposed to the cow standing up and the fish being caught. That's plausible. I don't know. Brendan could maybe shine some light on what makes if cows or horses or anything like that feed on a lunar schedule, or I guess typically there's not any wild cows anymore, so they typically feed when you go knock the bucket or the tractor drives up or whatever. The main one I heard the most is the cow, and my question is what it means when half are laying down. Oh, that does get me confused, Kyle. When there's like 4 of them under the tree and then there's like 5 of them grazing. You're like, are they kind of biting? Like they're biting somewhere, they're just not all biting. That one is a conundrum. Here's one. There's a couple loons. Follow the loons. Jeremy, you don't believe in the cow theory. So my buddy's grandfather used to have this theory, and it was in the early spring, or not in the early spring, but it was in the spawning time of year. And you know, I don't know if y'all have them everywhere, but in the South we have these little water beetles, and they gang up in these schools. They're like rafts. These rafts of these little water beetles, and you see them like scurrying around. But his grandfather used to tell us that if you saw a big pile of those water beetles on the water, that a bass was nesting under them. And I did find that to be true like twice. Tons of environmental cues that don't really exist. I love to hear them all. The crickets chirping was my dad's base signal that big females were moving on beds. I mean, you got to have something to get you fired up. We had these clover fields leading into down the road where our house is whatever. And when you would catch that clover field bloomed out like in red, it was on, dude. Like it would be green, and you'd drive through like all spring, and finally when it turned red, it was like Spawn City. It was like juicing. But the dogwood thing, I never could figure that one out, because my dumb ass would be like, "What's a dogwood?" You know what I mean? I'd be like, "Dad, they're biting. A dogwood's in bloom." He's like, "That's a fucking pine tree, kid." And I'm like, "Oh, well, where's a dogwood? What do those look like?" So if you bring your own crickets, ooh, does that send them to the beds? Interesting theory, Kyle. What are some other ones? I feel like I'm missing some. The water beetles and the bass bedding. Um, I know there's some really dumb ones I've heard over the years. What about winds out of the east? They bite the least. I think the easiest way, the crickets are always there, but the chirp is the key. You need pet crickets, Clay, so you can like sit out there and lay in your bed and get you a little cricket. Get like 2 crickets in your house in a little aquarium, and you just be laying there in bed. March 28th rolls around and you wake up from a dead sleep at 3 a.m. and you're like, it's time. Take the damn boat up. I like to spend my fishing time practicing my casting techniques. That way I'm doing something constructive. I would 100% agree, Burns. I just like casting's fun. Casting's fun. What are some more stupid? I'll tell you the easiest way to debunk any of these theories is to just fish bass tournaments, because I've heard so many times when I've come in and like either my dad have gone and me gone, or what typically happens is there'll be like like I'll stay here, and like my dad will go fishing up on the river, and he'll come back and he'll say, "Them fish weren't biting worth a shit." I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, they weren't doing nothing." And I said, "Did you see anybody fishing?" He said, "Yeah, I saw a couple bass guys. They weren't catching shit either." He's like, "Yeah, it sucks right now." I'm like, "You know what it took Saturday in the whatever tournament?" He's like, "What?" 23. Turns out they were biting. You know what the last check was? 18. It's like, really? Yeah. Turns out it wasn't the lake. It was you. But I love hearing people say, "Oh, they weren't biting." Yes, they were. Yes, they were. They weren't biting your bait, but they were biting. Ooh, glad it made it safe and sound, Frank. Old grasshopper. You know what's a shame is those big nasty black ones don't catch fish. Always biting before and after. Funny how it worked out like that, isn't it, Burns? Funny how that happened. Two more. I don't think the family will. Probably not. But it's the truth, dude. Like, as soon as you think it sucks out there, like, it might not be great, but there's a way. There is a way. And there is somewhere, somehow, a fish is eating. You know what I mean? That's like that's always been my thing. Like when and it was always like an old timer thing. Like they would just tell you fish ain't gonna bite. It's like, yes, they are. Like like everybody knows those days where you like go to the boat ramp and it's pissing rain and it's like 34 degrees and you're like at the gas station filling your boat up with gas and like some old dude sitting there drinking coffee and he's like, you going fishing? It's like, yeah. It's like, oh, them damn bass ain't gonna them fish ain't gonna bite in this. Well, yeah, they are. Like, you old geezer, you mean to tell me that for this entire day, not one fish in that entire lake is going to eat anything? Because I don't believe that. I believe I can fool some. But it was always there was never you didn't get a lot of positive interactions typically. You know what I mean? Like, hey man, looks like a great day to go fishing. I hope you catch a bunch. Should be good. Shouldn't be anybody out there on the lake. Should have it to yourself. Should be biting. It's usually like doom and gloom. Um, the full moon out during the day is kind of rumored to be bad for big bass. Yeah, I've heard that. But Clay, unpopular opinion, I don't think. I think the moon phase for like the first full moon and whatever fish moving up on bed is bullshit. I've seen that a million times, never happen. I don't know why that fairy tale keeps getting passed around that like there's some like clock that when there's a full moon in whatever month that like bass move up on bed, because that's to me dumb. Uh, but I mean, maybe one time some fish moved up on when they were supposed to, but on the back of the boat, no fish are biting. Burns, are you a bad luck? Are you bad luck, Burns? Like I went out on Town Lake. Dean did. But that was like once in a million years. I lived in Austin for 6 years, and I went on Town Lake every spring when the moon was supposed to be full in like whatever March or whatever. It was a barren wasteland on the bank. Like no fish moved up ever for 6 years. There was never like when the like moon was doing its thing and it was supposed to be like fish moving up. They never moved up, ever. Like there was always something else environmental that caused more of a push of fish than the moon. I feel like ever did. I feel like there's like 3 different things ahead of the moon that the moon's like. I feel like when Dean caught them, everything was perfect. Moon, water temp, time of day, all that kind of stuff. Just like it was a perfect storm. I think moon though. I don't. Obviously, it plays a role in fish and animal activity, but I think it's a little further down the list as far as what dictates a fish to spawn. But I was under the impression growing up that it was the deciding factor that needed to happen in order for fish to like flood the bank. So I look for it. You know what I mean? Like everybody else did. I'd wait. I'd see the full moon, on the calendar or whatever, and be like, oh, March 14th is going to be awesome. All the fish are like, not all the fish, but there's going to be a bunch of fish pull up shallow, full moon, they're ready to bed. No. Doug Hannon. I wish Doug was still around. The bass professor. We could ask him a few questions. He would probably say, this Tacklecraft guy's an idiot. The moon is the best. Pipe down, professor. It's bogus. It's bogus, bro. But I had my sneaky suspicions before I moved to Texas, and then I got to water where I could actually see like 10 feet down and realized that I was seeing nothing. Bass like to follow boats because the small bait fish like to group up under you. Forward-facing sonar also determined that was a lie. True. Very true. Bass like to follow boats because small bait fish. I've never seen bass do it. I'm sure they do it on smallmouth lakes in the summertime where they're deep and they get under the shadow of your boat. I bet smallmouth do it. I've had trout do it out in the Gulf in the summertime. You just got to think, like 12 feet of water. If there's a fish hanging around something, and then all of a sudden there's a shadow that they can get under that's like cool. I have seen that where you could just catch them under the boat and drift, and they just follow the shadow of the boat. That was kind of fun. What is Butch's moon theory? Is he a believer? Does he watch the moon and then go fishing? They will get right under your boat. In the summertime or anytime? I would think that would be a summertime thing. Which is a full moon out in the day. That's when he likes to catch them. All right, let me go. I got to answer this. Go be good. Let's go watch Castle Dine. See you in a little while. Adios.